Hi, welcome everybody. This is Artist Talk on Art, the ATOA. I'm Barry Kostrinsky, the president of the organization. We're a nonprofit 501c3, and we've had talks since
It's
1975 on the
delicious.
Lower West Side of New York City. I will say I'm letting everybody in. Mute yourself if you like, but feel free not to. I know I do this every time, and just be conscious. We can hear you talk if you're talking. So if that's the case, do mute yourself. But we've been doing talks when COVID hit. Obviously, that threw us into a tailspin. But there have been some odd windfalls, and this being our 44th Monday talk is one of them. And bringing together a large group like this, where nobody has to train into Manhattan, um, nobody has to deal with the getting to, and as well, we've had presentations from Scotland, from Australia, from Venice, Italy, from Mexico, from Southeast Nebraska, Colin. So we basically covered the globe. And of course, obviously from New York and Brooklyn and suburbia and so many places. And so, we've pivoted. You can see our past talks on our YouTube channel. It's Artist Talk on Arts, the full name. If you really want to get to anything about the ATOA, go to our website. It's atoanyc.org. That'll get you this Zoom link. It'll also show you the calendar. We have quite a program coming of talks that are booked all of February, March, and April, and May is half booked, and we have many in the hopper. And keep in mind, if you ever want to do a presentation, if you have a theme and you want to put together a few artists, usually three or four, go ahead and do it and reach out to me. We'll pick a date that works and we'll make it happen. It really is that easy. Again, we're a 501c3. All our talks and programming are free. If you'd like to contribute, you could see the link that's on the website. We have just about every way accepting cash. Um, and I want to thank, there are many people here who have donated, and it really does help us with our fixed costs. Having said that, what we have coming, just to give you a little heads up, next week we have Brainard Carey. That'll be a little different. He is a sort of specialist on the how-tos in the art world, what to do with your Instagram, maybe how to get shows, how to present. So this will be informative for artists in that sense. Then when we start in March, we have what we're going to do the beginning of March and the beginning of every month is going to be a performance event. And we have Veronica Pena, who once spoke, and she'll be organizing the artists. We have Alba Soda doing a performance on March 1st. Looking forward to that very much. Then on the 8th, we have artists from Tucson, Arizona. On the 15th and the 22nd, we actually have a Latinx art collective that Veronica's organized, and it's going to happen over 2 weeks because there are so many artists involved. And then Valerie Larco and Jane Dixon at the end of the month. If you want to see more, look at the calendar on our website. ATOA NYC is really the place for everything and anything. And as well, you can always email me with any questions. Tonight, we have Changing Colors. This was organized by Monroe Hodder. And I just want to give you the artists involved tonight are Yvette Cohn, who is actually not feeling well. She had her second shot, so Yvette will not present. But Ann Harmon is here, Diane Churchill, and Monroe Hodder are here. They will present. I want to thank Monroe, first off, just for putting this together, Monroe. It is work. Everything takes effort. We have limited time. We have limited energy. And I say the same thing over and over again. Where artists talk on art, we are only happen when artists like yourself talk on art. So by you putting this together, you are making us, Monroe. That's what makes us. And all of you that are here, that are listen, that participate. And I want to emphasize, we're about participation. When an artist is presenting, if you want to respond to something, and it doesn't have to be a question, you may want to make a statement, you may want to give a positive thought out, go ahead right in the middle. I sort of like the flow of ideas. And what you notice when we do that, the presenter then responds. And so, yes, we have question and answer periods, but feel free to do that at any time when the thought hits your mind. and you'll see it tends to open up the dialogue very nicely. I think the process we'll do is I'll hand this over to Monroe. Monroe, you can give maybe a light introduction and discussion, the title, Changing Colors, maybe mention the artists, how you know them, anything you like. And then your choice, who goes, and we'll sort of hand it to them. Now, sometimes we have technical difficulties. I'll be honest, we always have some technical difficulties, but we always work through them. We have people in this, in their little boxes here who help us with that. And so if anything like that happens, consider it a time to take a breather and we will work it out. We have always worked it out. And these are small problems. We all live life. We know what big problems are. So let's enjoy ourselves. Larry, pass that wine around. I see you slurping it. Well, cheers. I want to thank you all for coming. And Monroe, I'll hand it off to you. You don't have to screen share. You could just do a brief intro. Few things to know. There's a chat function here. You can put in website, Instagram information, anything you like at all. You can put questions in there if you like. I will tend to read those. Links to anything that you'd like to share, even if it's a book that touches your mind and is relevant to the conversation, or an artist that you feel is relevant or that you want to discuss. So feel welcome. There's a chat function. You might want to mute yourself. Just beware. We can hear you. So welcome, everybody. And Monroe, go ahead. And thank you.
Well,
thank you again.
Thank you, Barry. And I'm thrilled to be here and to be talking about our group and about color. Diane Churchill and Ann Harmon, as you said, will also be talking. And we're all three painters who have, we think, a very different and interesting view of color. And we hope you think so too. So should I make myself big, Barry?
Everybody, you can always make the speaker big by hitting the 3 dots in their box in the top right and pinning them. But I think Monroe will have you present last. So I would say do a little intro and then we'll just move on either to Ann or Diane. I sort of like to have the organizer go last.
All right, perfect. Okay, Diane, are you here?
I am here. I am here.
Great.
Okay. So shall I?
Yeah, try and screen.
So do I have the floor now?
You have the floor and the ceiling and all the rectangles.
Okay, okay, good. I'm on. All right. Well, I want to thank you, ATOA, Barry, and also Monroe. This is a very exciting opportunity for me. And I'll just say a few words and then hopefully I can screen share successfully. For me, color is just about everything in my painting. It's often the subject of my paintings. I try my best to harness the power of color. Now, we all know this, but I'm going to say it. Color waves enter into our bodies through the lenses of our eyes. So I think it's very interesting to note that color affects us physically, affects our inner organs, as well as aesthetically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. And I have a little brief story to tell before I screen share about a color study that was done years ago involving horses in their stalls. So to tell it correctly, forgive me, I'm going to read my notes on this. One stall was painted magenta. The horses were taken out for exercise, all the same time, the same exercise. And when they returned to the stable, their temperatures were taken. Whichever horse was in the magenta stall had a lower temperature. Turns out pink, even hot pink, is a calming color. So who knew how it all affects us? All right, I'm going to try to screen share. Got my image. No, I have to do that.
I like that story. I like hearing that about
good.
And the impact of color.
Good. Okay. Now, desktop. Okay, and my images, view full screen. Okay, so far so good. Great. Can everybody see something red?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So I use all colors in my painting, but tonight I decided to focus on one color, on the color red, because I love red. Red, blood, passion, secrets of the heart. This is a little tiny watercolor about postcard size of several reds and a few gold dots. Even in this tiny size, I'm trying to claim the power of red on a small scale. Okay, we're at a larger scale now. This is called Love Story, and it's 54 inches high by 42 wide on canvas. To me, using different red pigments is a little bit like hearing two notes on the piano next to each other, played at the same time. There's a familiarity, a closeness, but there's also an edge. And so in this ground, I tried to use those different pigments that would give me the kind of pulsating space that I wanted. Red and gold is a theme for me. They stimulate each other and they partner each other. Red pulsates, gold shines. One is the earth, the other is more visionary. The vertical stroke, I have a cursor here. The vertical stroke is made with very thick gesso and a thin wash of pigment. And the other form is a leaf form made of gold leaf, leaf of leaf. And the two are trying to have some kind of love story or some kind of conversation.
I like how you mentioned that gold is visionary. I mean, if you go back to early Byzantine or religious paintings, the gold is meant to be a spiritual, a higher side. And metallics have a unique place in the visual world. And, you know, gold is almost worshipped by a lot of cultures. I mean, I think literally was.
Yeah.
It's an interesting analogy. The spiritual meaning of the color.
Yeah, you said it so well, Barry. I think the same, and I'm trying to refer to those things as well. So I don't use gold leaf in a very standard way. I kind of distress it. This is the leaf that you saw, leaf form. I do like to use the leaf form. The beautiful arched curves of the leaf is for me symbolic of all of nature. But the gold within is marred and it's painted on and it's broken and it's distressed, and life is stressed as well. Oops. I thought I had another detail from this. I guess not. Okay. This is the largest piece I'm going to show tonight in red. It's called Immensity of Small Moments. It's 50 inches by 72 inches wide, and I try to imply even more space as it goes off the edge of the stretchers. For years, I felt I couldn't get enough red, and I hope that other people craved red too, because I certainly did. I wanted the viewer here to enter into the painting. Obviously, I wanted it to be an immersion in red. This is really an older painting, but I wanted to show this consistent focus I had. I trace my involvement with red back to a trip to the Austrian Alps. I think it was in the 90s. So I was high up in the Alps. Walking around, I was struck by the red geraniums that were cascading out of the many window boxes. I felt, and I remember it very well, I felt I had never seen red like that. I remarked that to my Austrian companion, who said, "You never have. The air is pure here." So that was a real trigger moment for me in trying to accomplish something of that purity of red that I saw there. Now I'm going to take a little detour to talk about cochineal dye and its many shades of red. These are examples, obviously, of one color in cochineal, and I will explain that with producing all these different shades by having different mordants. The cochineal is a bug that is very plentiful in Mexico and down into South America. And it's, I think it's scraped off of cactus leaves. And it's been used as a dye, creating beautiful, beautiful tones of reds, purples, scarlets, back to ancient times. But at some point, I think in the 1600s, I believe, they started making a pigment out of it. And I learned this by being in Mexico City a few years back when there was an exhibit called Red, which showed paintings of, say, Titian used cochineal for red, Rembrandt did, and Van Gogh did. So it was shipped around the world. It was very expensive. It was prized. It was replaced by the synthetic red pigments that we have today, which have more durability than the cochineal had. But seeing that show was an inspiration for me. And this is a little detail of a hand-woven rug I bought in Oaxaca when I was there at the same time. So from the very light pink, orangey to the deep, deep purpley background color, those are all from the cochineal bug. And I have to add that it's this dried female bug that was squashed and produced the dye, of course. I hope somebody will break in and make comments, so I'm not talking to myself. Okay, I see the owner of this piece is here.
Hi, I have something to say. I was watching a documentary yesterday about Peru and the Indians who are using cochineal to dye their wool.
Aha!
It's just a coincidence that I didn't even know about cochineal, but wow, what an intense color. They have the live cactus leaves and the bugs, the insects feeding on it.
Yep.
And the host picked up some of the insects and crushed them, and the color was incredible.
Incredible. I have seen that, and if you go to Oaxaca, you can see that, and you can go where they still weave and use it, and they'll show you, they'll crush it in the hand, and then they'll put a little honey on one finger to get one shade, and a little lemon on another.
Right. They were doing that in the palm of her hand. She was mixing colors by adding one ingredient or another and getting, different shades of pink and orange, and so beautiful.
It's really.
I'd like to make a comment about the color red. The great European masters used vermilion, which is an absolutely stunning red. Thing is, though, it has mercury in it, which makes it rather poisonous. But if you look at some of the old master paintings, you see that the red just pops right out at you, and that's vermilion.
Aha, thank you. And
sure.
The cochineal red was called carmine when it was produced.
Ah, okay.
So that's carmine. I meant to mention that. Yeah. Well, going back to red and gold, this is a painting on paper. It's 39 inches by 26 inches. It's from a series called Above Below, for obvious reasons. We've mentioned European art. I'm aware that in Chinese culture, red is celebrated for being symbolic of happiness and prosperity, but I have not had those kind of references when I've worked with red and gold. What has affected me was my years studying art history, and the gold leaf panels, which Barry mentioned. Very often, those gold leaf panels of the Middle Ages and the Quattrocento, very often there'll be a figure in a flaming red robe or an orange robe. And sometimes it's Mary Magdalene, which that's another story. But the red and gold often appears, plus the gold leaf was applied to a kind of deep red ground. So that's for me where it started. Oh, and
Diana, where did you study art history?
I studied art history at Wellesley, and they had a fantastic art history department. They really did.
Seven Sisters School, yes?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, Seven Sisters.
Yeah, I
What was
I wanted to take studio classes at that time. They wouldn't let you take more than one or two. You had to be an art historian. But I have always appreciated that very strong foundation in art history, which it gave me as an artist. So,
what would you say are some of the periods in art history that you're most drawn to or that you enjoy?
I've always been in love with the medieval, not the high Renaissance, but that medieval and early Renaissance, and even early medieval. I like the early medieval very, very much. So yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I ask you a question? Were you going to talk to about the Mordants?
No, I didn't. No, say something about the Mordants. That you mean with the cochineal, with the dyeing?
Yes.
I was told about a number of them, but I only recall lemon juice, honey, surprisingly, baking soda. I'm sure that vinegar is a mordant, but they used all kinds of mordants. And I recommend a trip to Oaxaca. You can learn so much.
Okay, can't wait to go.
Yeah. I'll tell you where to go.
Don't forget your mask.
Yeah.
So I just want to mention a little bit about this blue streak. I mostly use paint, which is a wet medium, but I love to have some dry medium as well. So I use chalk pastel, which was this, and I love the way the chalk pastel sits on top of the painted ground. And I feel, for me, it's kind of holistic because the world is full of both wet and dry elements. So in almost all my work, I do try to include both, or it just happens actually. And then I think of a reason why later.
Diane, I'd say this is the second time I saw a division that's like what Mark Rothko does. Am I right to assume you enjoy Rothko's work very much?
You're right to assume that. And when I was doing this series, I worried about that because I had not been doing that kind of division before. And I can also say that, sadly, the last semester of his life, last year of his life, I was in his class at Hunter. So I did have that experience. It was very sad because that was the end of his life. But yes, I love Rothko.
Let me ask you, being that you actually were with him, what was he like as a teacher? How would you describe him? From what I've heard, he was very depressed at that period. So
he was depressed.
Tell us about him a little, because there's nothing like a firsthand account.
Well, what I'd like to tell about him, I was just thinking of it recently. He was very quiet. He wanted artists to be working at their easels, and he would go around and crit. Well, that wasn't happening back then. Artists had their studios, they were working with kids. They didn't want to do that. So there was a tension in the class, and some of the students were not so nice to Mark Rothko, and I think he was probably partly disgusted as well as his own depression. However, and I wish I could do justice to this moment, there was one time I think he was slightly annoyed at the students', I don't know, just breezy attitudes. And he launched into a kind of credo of how it was for him and the others who worked so many years without even thinking of exhibiting. and what it meant to them. And I can't give it words, but that was the only time he really opened up and talked. And it was extremely moving. I felt very privileged to be there. And then his birthday happened during that semester, and people brought him a cake and tried to celebrate him to make up for some of the more insulting members of the class. So I'm a little sorry this has been recorded, but this is all true. So, all right, we'll go on. I'm going to show a few little tiny pieces. This is 8 inches square on khadi paper. I love khadi paper. It's from India. It's very strong and textural, handmade, of course. And I was thinking of a jewel-like form, but I later called it heart because I was having a heart issue. And so this became very important kind of healing piece for me. And the blue areas are iridescent pastel, oil pastel, which I absolutely love, usually Sennelier, and it creates a very thick texture, which I like. Here's another little piece. This is 12 inches square. It's called Clouded Mirror. Mirrors are something we see in, but if they're clouded, we don't see too well, and we don't see too well. So that was my thought. I confess to a great love of sparkle, and some of it is here. These are mica chips. You just need a little water. So I don't use the commercially panels of mica. I maybe will sometime, but I have a rock from Maine where I can scrape off flakes of mica with an X-Acto knife. And I prefer that because they can be one layer, they can be multi-layered, they can be a combination, and they have the shapes, the natural shapes. So there are pieces where I use tons of mica, but this just has a little.
This
For
is really
sparkle.
beautiful. This is really beautiful,
Oh, thank you. Who said that?
Peggy.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. For sparkle, I also use a lot of gold leaf, and I use glass bead gel, but I don't have anything to show you tonight from that.
What color is that red? Or is it a mixed red?
This one,
Well, I was thinking of the one before.
the previous one.
It might be the same red though.
Oh, thank you. That's, well, it used to be cadmium red light, but now it's cadmium free red light.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure. And it's a little diluted. It's a little thicker in areas and diluted in areas.
Mhm.
This reminds me a lot of the kind of red you see in the medieval panels.
Mhm.
This last little one is called Dripping Sun, 12-inch square. A different gold pigment. I do use different gold pigments. And Monroe pointed out to me that these look like tears, which they are, or they're wounds of blood coming from the sun because we're in trouble as a planet. Although I don't want the piece to be only about trouble. This is now the most recent piece of the ones I've shown you, and it's called Meditation. It's 54 inches high by 40 inches wide. And this is my pandemic piece. This is my piece to ward off sadness, to be aspirational, to have light and brilliance. And in it, I use the red and gold overlapping strokes to create these kind of different shades of red to gold.
I think you've, Diane, in this one, you've achieved a lot of different tones inside the gold that adds to a lot of depth in the canvas. There's no question about it.
Thank you.
Nice work there. Not that that's always the goal, but it's nicely done. I often look at a master's work at the background, and if you'll notice in the dark background, it's not one color. It's
Right.
these subtle differences, and that yields a very beautiful complexity for those that are willing to look. And I think it's working very well in this one as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I talked about the square format. I like the long vertical as well. And it makes it possible to have, there's a movement that can go up and movements that go down. So I try to exploit both of those movements in this piece. At the bottom, there's a lot of gold leaf put on very roughly. I thought of it as chunks of gold falling to the earth, but it could be seen just as gold, a gold ground. Shall I advance out of this to the detail? I guess
Sure.
I will.
Sure. I do want to ask you something because
Yeah.
often I you can get a read on an artist as a person based on what they're doing. And as I'm looking at this work, I can say you're not a hockey player. But what I want to ask you is, what is your interest outside of art that might explain a little bit more about, because you have a sort of a Zen feel, you have a minimal side to you here, you have a light hand. How is that reflected in something else in what you do or like that reveals a similar personality? Or am I wrong? Are you like a defenseman in hockey like Schultz, and you're like the enforcer on the ice?
Let me see. I'm a quiet person. I'm a quiet person. I don't know if I'm a Zen person. I'm full of all the little storms inside that everyone is, but I am trying for a stillness in this painting. I think that I'm reaching for something in this painting. As far as what I do in my life, I sing, I listen to music, I dance. That's what I do.
I'd
I
like
don't
to
know how
say,
that plays into this, but it's an interesting question, Barry.
Diane,
Yes.
I would just like to say that Diane has the most beautiful voice, one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard.
Oh,
She
Monroe.
sings in a choir, and she is just unbelievable. That I think for me, both her voice and her paintings have a very spiritual quality.
Thank you, Monroe. Thank you. And that makes me want to say, being in a choir has really affected my painting, because when you're immersed in harmonies, it's not just what I'm singing. I'm around altos, tenors, and basses, and I think that one of them is here tonight. I'm hearing these unbelievable harmonies. And so when I'm painting, I'm working with harmonies, and sometimes I'm hearing the sounds when I'm painting as well. I mean, sometimes I'm getting a feeling of the sound from the paint, is what I should say. So there's an overlap between music and art in my life. But Monroe, thank you. That's
Well,
great.
it sounds like that's the answer to Barry's question right there. There's the overlap.
And I didn't know it. I didn't know to say it, but it came out. Thanks.
Mhm.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Sometimes as artists, we're so absorbed in what we do that you need an outside eye to just say, you do these two things, and then you see it differently. There's no question. And that's sort of the advantage of our group, where we can share ideas and thoughts. And sometimes, an artist does not necessarily explain his work or her work the best. They know an angle of creating the work, but that does not mean they can set it in their personal context, the historical context, or even why they're doing it or what it means now. It's very hard to analyze current work. It usually takes a couple of years because you're picking it and digesting and responding. So that's the advantage of a forum like this, or when you go out with friends to an opening and you have a discussion. That's sort of the advantage. You get to see yourself outside yourself a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Here's another detail from that piece.
Oh, wait.
So These are 3 paintings, each 56-inch square, that were in a solo show I had at a place called Union Arts in Spark Hill, New York, a really beautiful space. And
That's gorgeous.
thank you. I think that these paintings were very fortunate to be on that wall color, which was a very subtle gray-green, beautiful color of the wall with light coming in from the windows and the sides. So that was a good complement to the colors. I had done this one and this one in my studio when the curator came. He said, well, would you do a third one? So I did this one, and it really helped me towards realizing this dream of having a whole, almost a wall of color, like a environment of color in front of me.
You're very lucky to have your work in a setting like that. It's not uncommon for people to have some beautiful artwork and it to be blocked by a couch or it to be on top of another
Yeah.
painting. And it can really take away. I've got to comment how the color of these paintings are sort of reflected into the wood and the floor. And
Yeah.
it really brings out the red. I don't think an artist could ask for a better setting for their work. I do want to mention Fran Beeler, one of the board members of the ATOA. She has written in the chat that she's currently co-curating an exhibition called Fragile Earth, Artists Respond to the Climate Crisis. And she's pleased to say that Diane, her series will be in the show. And she wrote that this series consists of cries of concern for the now threatened Earth and refers to air and the existence and energy of thought. I love that poetic statement. It reflects the poetry of Diane's work. Nicely said, Fran, and thanks for sharing. And I'll have to point out, Leah Poller earlier mentioned a comment about the energy of color. And Diane, you certainly mentioned that about the horses, how the color affected their temperature. And so to your point, we absorb color and we react to it when we absorb it, sensually, emotionally, and physically. Go ahead, share for another 5 minutes or 2 minutes, whatever you like.
Oh, okay.
Anybody,
Okay, well,
feel free to jump in with questions.
all
and
right.
then we will go to our next artist.
Okay.
Barry,
Well,
can you hear me? No? Can you hear
hello?
me? Leah.
Yes, Leah, go ahead.
Oh, Leah, hi.
Hi, Diane. Lovely presentation. I wanted to comment after hearing Diane's story about the horses. It reminded me of an experience that I shared when my youngest child went to a Montessori school. And I sat in while they talked to these children that were 4 years old and told them that color had energy and that they could feel the energy of the color. And they had blocks of these intense colors. And the children played with them and said the name of the color and held up the color. And then they put these blocks in a bag. Each student had a little bag with the blocks. And the teacher said, okay, pull out the red block. And do you know that those kids could feel the color? Nobody had told them they wouldn't be able to. And so they were able to systematically separate the colors in the bag and produce them. It was very, very exciting to watch.
Hmm.
Oh, what a story. That's
Yeah.
fabulous.
Hmm.
Okay, well,
Diane,
yes.
are you going to put these paintings on your website so we can look at them again?
Some of them are on my website. You mean these orange ones?
Well, I was thinking particularly the heart one.
The heart.
Mhm.
Oh, I'll check if it's not on there. Yes, I do need to put more. I want to add more. So thank you for that thought. I plan to put on more.
I look forward to it.
Okay. Okay, well, I was going to finish up very quickly then. Just to say a little bit about, this is not red, but these marks were made with a transparent oil pastel, which means that when you're drawing with it, you can't see anything. It's a little bit like invisible ink. You can't see it until you cover it with a color. So it forced me to just work kinetically since I couldn't respond to what I was looking at. And I've been having a lot of fun with that. And I'm not going to talk more, but just show you how beautifully transformed this painting was when the light came in my studio right through the window and it brought up the transparent oil pastel underneath. Here's another one. The dark shapes or the window shapes and me taking a picture. And I'll end with this. That was those strange oil pastel shapes and my shadow here taking the picture. So it's a little bit of a profile in red, and that's it. I think that's a good ending. Okay. Thank you so much. I have really loved doing this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. That was marvelous.
Thank
One
you.
question, Diane, are these works on paper?
Some of them are. The last one, yes, was the Above
Yeah,
Below
well-
series. A lot of them are canvas, though. I work on both.
You use the oil pastel on canvas?
Both, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And the
Thank
oil pastel, I use acrylic paint, so that's already a little bit of a resist around the oil crayon, oil pastel.
So you're leave us your website and Instagram page so we can look at more of your work.
Oh, okay. Let me go to chat now that I'm not talking. Thank you. I would love that.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank you.
that. Okay.
Very,
Thank you, Diane.
very evocative, emotional work. Really, really a pleasure to look at.
Thank you, Effie.
Basha Ruth Nelson said, your work truly touched me. I think that's one of the nicest things somebody can say, that, you know, as you said, how color affects you when one artist's work touches. And always we do sort of influence each other. Roberto Bernardi said, beautiful, short, simple, and sweet. So nice to hear positive comments. And as artists, you know, we often need that. As you discussed, when Mark Rothko was your teacher, he went around and gave a crit to the artists in his class. You can be sure it wasn't like, great work, keep going. It was more like, you know, traditional college art crits that can be quite brutal and make you want to give up painting. So it's nice to hear everybody be positive and share and take something away. So thank you, Diane. That was a beautiful presentation. And thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Very happy.
You're welcome. Everybody, again, we're ATOA, Artist Talk on Art. ATOANYC.org is our website. Every Monday, we've got something interesting. There's a calendar in our website that'll show you what's to come and links to everything you want to know about us as well. We're going to move on to Ann Harmon. Again, the theme tonight is Changing Color, organized by Monroe Hodder. Monroe will go lastly at the end. And again, thank you, Monroe, for bringing these artists together. And Ann, go ahead, jump in. Tell us a little bit about where you are, anything you like about yourself, and then go ahead and try to screen share and we'll go forward. So welcome, Ann.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, Diane, that was a great presentation. It's going to be hard to follow.
Oh, no.
I wanted to thank Monroe also for inviting me tonight. I'm lucky enough to have Monroe live across the street. And so we get to speak quite often about painting. And I have been working for many years as a scenic artist in the film and TV and theater for the past 20 years. And most recently at the Metropolitan Opera, where I was painting scenery and costumes and props for the stage. And my studio work has been pretty much just, you know, a weekend here and there, or a stolen moment here and there. So I have to say the pandemic has been a great thing for me. It's definitely been a big silver lining. I've been able to devote my time exclusively to the studio, and it's been wonderful. So let me see if I can try to share my screen, and I'll start to show you some of these paintings that I made.
So Anne, you had to leave the Met, didn't you?
Well, yeah, they closed on the 12th of March, and they haven't reopened. Now they have a series of problems, but yeah, so there's nothing happening right now at the Met. Oh, let me see. Sorry, it started at the end, so I'll have to go back to the beginning. Sorry about that. A little presentation again. My name is Anne Harmon Gale, and here's a picture of me working as a scenic artist at the Met. And one of my jobs was maintaining the dancing bears at Magic Flute for Magic Flute. And this is backstage. This is a painting that I called Crouch Before the Pounce. And it's 7 foot 10 inches by 8 foot 9 inches, and it's acrylic on canvas. And this painting went through many, many iterations. It's in color combinations. I felt like every time I walked into the studio, it wanted to be a completely new painting every single time. So once I decided to kind of embrace this sporadic nature of this painting, it started to really kind of come together. And this Pepto-Bismol pink, which actually was from the opera Cendrillon, against the acidic green, kind of fit the sense of confrontation that was unfolding in the studio. And the equine form seems to always echo in my abstract paintings. I always started my drawing practice very, very young from drawing my own horses. And I've always kind of fought this tendency, you know, to bring horses into paintings, but this time again, I tried to embrace it. And that's when this painting really, really started to come together. Or rather, it's kind of about the tenuous nature of holding things together when they seem to be wanting to be pulled apart.
And were you a rider, a horse rider, or what was your experience with horses?
Yeah. I was born on a farm in North Dakota, and I always had horses. I trained my own horses. And so, yeah, horseback riding was a very big part of my formative years. And I think that this painting, Pounce, is kind of about that real vital energy, about gathering together of your energies and almost kind of hibernating. And so you have the strength to take that leap into the next unknown. You know, almost every time you start something new seems to be kind of a leap into the unknown. And I try to give my paintings kind of a shimmering quality and some kind of resonance. And that can mean a lot of time looking, thinking, and pondering. And this is a smaller painting on paper that I made. It's 22 inches by 30 inches. Oftentimes when I'm working on these bigger paintings, I'll feel a need just to stop, take a break, and very quickly, you know, make something on a smaller piece. And this is one of those. And I call it setting stakes. I often feel like I'm a little bit freer to experiment also on paper. Feels a little bit less of a serious commitment.
I like that you sort of jump down to Mona Lisa scale when you want to do a small work. Obviously, your work working large for scenery and set has influenced you to be able to tackle, as you said, I think it was 7 foot 10 inch by 8 foot 9 inch, which I know most of the artists here, myself included, might be scared to go against such a scale. There was also an interesting group of artists that worked during World War II. There was a project that involved artists doing camouflage to make it look like they were tanks and other things. And a lot of those artists became very famous contemporary artists and were probably able to handle scale. And it's not that well known by many that they actually got some odd training in World War II in a department working on camouflage. And the names are not coming to me now, but we're picking up. It's quite a group of artists. Sorry to interject that, but I think there has been a trend in the last 20, 30 years of artists who work on set design, large scale backgrounds, even signs. And they come into the art world with a power that an artist who just works on an easel and they come with a comfort for scale that easel artists just, we don't have. And so you bring something to the game from a different angle that's quite valuable.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And yes, anybody please who'd like to jump in, I welcome any kind of questions. And I wanted to say on this, on the bigger ones, I often lay them on the floor like they're backdrops and paint them standing up. I have these bamboo poles that I can put my paintbrushes into these bamboo poles and then paint holding the bamboo poles, which is what we do painting backdrops. But then I have a little bit of a change because when the Met closed its doors, like I mentioned earlier, it was a real exciting moment to think about being able to spend all of my time in the studio, but it was also a little bit daunting. And it's also kind of, this time was also such a time of limbo. It was very hard to kind of get the creative juices flowing. And it was an imperfect moment. And I felt like I kind of needed company in the studio. And I happened to have these older canvases in my studio that were from my scenic artist days. And these canvases were still kind of calling out to me for some transformation. And that seemed like a solid point to take off from, a good departure point, if you will. And so this first one I made, I called Flipping Vermeer. And this again is 6 foot by 3 inches. I'm sorry, 6 foot 3 inches by 6 foot 9 inches. And this is a charcoal and acrylic on canvas. And what I do is I have, on the other side of this canvas is a study of a Vermeer painting. And so what I did is I took some of these canvases that I had and I flipped them over and began working on the reverse side, which is why I call it Flipping Vermeer. And some of the original sketch from the painting on the other side came through, and I used that as the base, like the departure point for this painting. And I just wanted to kind of rush the light over the color, splash the color, and accentuate this kind of searching gesture that the scientist had as he was kind of, you know, reaching out for the unknown. I felt like kind of using like brighter, flashier colors, you know, something like Vermeer probably didn't have his hands on, and kind of shocking the painting and back into the contemporary world.
I think if Vermeer saw this, he would really like it.
Thank you. I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
And here I'll show you this is the original study that's on the other side, which looks quite different. This next one is a smaller painting. This is only 6.5 inches by 8 inches. Again, one of those smaller paintings that I like to work on the side. You know, just allows me a little bit more exploration, and I wanted just to, again, just see a little bit of the play of the colors and see what they would do with these figures. And this one is based on Vermeer's Woman in Blue Reading a Letter. And this next piece is 6 foot by 7 foot 10 inches. And I call this one the Reverse Monet, because as you can imagine, on the other side is a Monet painting, or a study that I made of a Monet painting. And this one is a little bit more complicated to transpose in my own way, if you will. First of all, Monet is such a master, and I wasn't quite sure how I was going to make this painting a little bit my own. But I just started working on the sea and on the sky, and just kind of tried to make, you know, keep working on it as a whole painting. And the standing figures kind of disappeared, and they seemed to be kind of swallowed by the sea, and the two seated figures seemed to float in the garden, kind of weighted down by the deep shadows. And this painting became a little bit more about the conversation that the sea has with the flowers, and the sky with the fence and the figures. I wanted to make a little bit more of an expressive whole piece, not just an observation of a scene.
I like, Anne, the way you've engaged the masters, and yet you've made it your own totally. It's sort of nice. You're looking at them and you're sort of inputting yourself. I think that it's a very smart idea because you both learn from them, and then you do a derivative or you integrate their work, and you come up with something very interesting, because that is very far from a Monet. And obviously, if you study art history, you recognize it as a Monet right away. As well, in your earlier piece, the Vermeer piece, there's no doubt that figure looked like a Francis Bacon figure as well. Something about the quality.
Yeah, I love his work.
Very nice.
I have a comment. How artists, when they're work in a particular age of time. They work in a particular place under particular light conditions, and that has a lot to do with, you know, the final piece. And you know, I don't know, just reversing it like that. It's you're in your time now, and you have your how can I put it? Influences, you know. So it's like two different things, two different worlds, which is interesting.
I'd like to point out Fran Beeler, and by the way, that was Francine Fran Kornfeld, who is a longtime board member and now on the advisory board for the ATOA. Thank you for Fran. And
Sure.
Fran Beeler has mentioned that she loves these appropriated images. How have you created how you have created something new in your own from famous images? Very nice, very nice. Continue, Anne. Don't want to interrupt. And as well, anyone, feel free at any time to jump in, of course.
Yes, please. Thank you. I welcome the input, because I see how it could be confusing how they all kind of come together. Let's see. I wanted to show you also the study that was on the other side. This was the kind of a quick study that I'd made, and this is an image of the original, which is Monet's Garden at San Andres, I believe. And another thing I kind of felt, I guess, with this painting is that I read when I was studying this painting that Monet made this painting when he was visiting his family. I do believe it's his father that's the seated figure in the chair. And I always felt like this painting had a little bit of I don't know, a little boring. I don't know why, there's so much happening. But it seems to be that Monet at the time was with his family, and his girlfriend at the time was back in Paris having their first child. But he couldn't be with her because his family did not approve of her. So he had to kind of pretend that he'd broken up with her, and so he would continue receiving funds from his family. So it seemed to me that maybe this would be a moment where he was not at his happiest, and he was just doing what he could as an artist to kind of get through the day. But of course, it's a masterpiece.
And can you go back? You said, if you go one back, you said you did that study.
Yeah.
Can you, and that's the study that you did for the back. I just want to give it a good look.
Yeah, that's the study that I did on the back. I mean, this is the original one that I started with, and then I turned this one over. And in scenic art, what we do is the initial lay-in is kind of laid in with an ink drawing. Again, standing up, you're doing an ink drawing. And when it flips over, a little bit of that, just a little bit of that ink drawing will come through. And then I can use that as like my departure points again, but the image is reversed.
So interesting.
And are you working on the floor or on the wall?
You know, it depends, a little bit of both. I have to say, it depends on how much time my dog spends in the studio sometimes. You know?
Yeah.
Honestly, I have to say I work less on the floor when I'm working in oils for obvious reasons, you know. because it's all the dry time. Acrylics dry right away. It doesn't matter if my dog walks across the painting, but with an oil painting, it's a little bit more time sensitive. This next one is called Electric Corot, and it's a 4 foot 6 inches by 5 feet. And this is an oil on canvas. Again, I want to say that another change that I've made because of the quality of the color is that I've switched from working mostly in acrylics to working with oils because of the quality of the color that you can get. And this is the first one that was completely from the very beginning pure oil. And this was from a study that was done by Corot. It was just a very, very quick study, and it was a simple image and had very subdued colors. But this one, I just seemed to me like it was calling out for some real, vibrant colors, something kind of neon and it needed a real freshness. So this painting I did really in one day. You can still see it's a little washy and maybe doesn't seem completely finished, but I just really wanted to do it in one day. And this is the study that's on the back. You can see again the very, very subtle colors. And this one I chose, I remember, because it was just a quick sketch. I think that Corot was doing when he had first gotten to Italy. And he was just going around sketching things around the countryside. And this is actually south of Rome. And I lived in Italy for 10 years. And I lived in Frascati, and which was south of Rome. And this landscape to me seemed very familiar. So I was kind of drawn to it.
I'm going to bring up a little outside here, but your studies are so interesting. And then you flip them and you take them somewhere else. It would almost be nice to see you photograph your study, sort of print that on a canvas, then do your work that you do to it and have the two side by side so I could sort of see the before and after, or the back and the front. Just an idea, because these studies, many artists would be happy to show them themselves.
Oh, I didn't know that was the stuff that was in the wall.
Oh, you mean so you could see them? So you could see them both? Yeah, because right now you won't be able to. Huh?
That's the recycling stuff there.
Yeah, I guess I could. I have a couple more canvases that I could use. So that's a very good suggestion. I'm going to try that for the next one.
Very nice. Do me a favor, if you're not on mute and you're talking, we can hear you. So
Ben and Jerry's,
yes, we'd all like some Ben and Jerry's. If possible, mute yourself. Otherwise, I know I always do it like this, but
or you have to send everybody Ben and Jerry's if you don't.
Just send us all Ben and Jerry's. I think I got that. Continue, Anne. Very nice.
Okay, thank you, Barry. This next one I called Hopper Reversed, and this one is 4 foot 8 inches by 7 feet, and it's another oil on canvas. And some of the original drawing still exists, as you can see. Again, the image is reversed. And here, I really wanted to explore the play of light and shadow, as well as introduce some colors that are, or I guess that I imagined would be in these coastal grasses that were moving in the ocean breezes. And I also wanted to explore the relationship of architecture in an abstracted landscape in this one.
And why do you reverse them?
Well, you mean rather than painting over them, which is my other option.
Maybe I'm not getting something here.
So I think the painting is on the back of this. And so when she turns it over and she paints in the front, she uses that image. And so it's reversed from the one on the back.
Right. And so you can see through, it bleeds through.
Well, I can see the initial sketch. That's all I can see. I can't see any of the original colors, but I can see some of the original sketch.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
And it was kind of a transformational passage for me, I guess, being able to just dedicate all my time working in the studio. And I kind of wanted to work through scene painting first. Scene painting is kind of another way of painting rather than just, fine art. It's more of a craft. And so I kind of wanted to use old scene paintings to kind of evolve more in the studio. Here you can see the study that's on the reverse side of this painting. It's an old one. It got folded up and tucked away somewhere. And here is actually, this is the photo that I took of Hopper's Lighthouse at Two Lights that is actually in the Met here in New York. This one I call Madonna of the Empty Lap. And she's 22.5 inches by 30 inches again. And this is a acrylic and oil on paper. And this painting has been knocking around in my studio for a while and started out as an abstract painting. And it just really wasn't going anywhere. And last March, I pulled it out to start to work on it again. And again, it's just nothing was happening with this painting. And I happened to look over and see this print that I've had for a very long time of Parmigianino's Madonna of the Long Neck, or in Italian, Madonna col Collo Lungo. And I've carried this with me for many years, and I just kind of became entranced with the rhythms of the drapery and the gesture of her hand lightly touching her chest. And I chose to leave her lap barren. It kind of helped express the loss that I was feeling during that time. And I felt it really kind of also the loss that, we were all feeling globally in this time in March. It was a very specific time.
And I think you've gotten a lot of expression in the face, and a lot of it you've gotten by absence. And we had another artist talk about absence maybe a week or two ago, and you achieve it with sort of minimal expressive brushwork, and even the hands, the way you get that almost manneristic thing going. Nicely done. This piece and the Hopper one really caught my eye when I looked through your work. I think they're very successful pieces. They, again, draw back to classical artists and they bring them right to the contemporary era. But certainly there's that little bit of a Bacon feel again, which adds an emotional edge to the work that you won't get when you go to the next image. You won't get it in the original Parmigiana.
Thank you so much. Wow.
We give compliments for free here. This is the ATOA. This is about supporting artists and, saying the good things we never get to hear.
Boy, that's great. Very much appreciated. You do spend a lot of time by yourself in the studio, right? And here is a Parmigianino's Madonna, the one that I was speaking about. And what I wanted to say, I guess, about all of my work is that in scenic art, the art lies in the interpretation. And by turning over these old canvases and reworking the reversed image, I felt like I was more free to kind of re-examine the image in a more intuitive way. And I intend to continue developing this body of work. More specifically, I want to explore these disruptive gestures that keep occurring in my images. And I'm very excited to see where this all takes me next. Thank you very much.
Let me stop that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
Very well done. Yep.
That was a beautiful presentation. You definitely followed up very well. Both Diana and Anne, smooth, comfortable, and interesting work using colors in different ways. No question about it. That's sort of the beauty, the diversity of artists. And Anne, I will say to you, I've done what you said the other thing you could do, which is I've painted on top of Monet posters and Van Gogh and El Greco. It's quite exciting. You've got the finished painting right there, and then you actually learn so much by going over the artist's work and, you know, how you vary it. But it's quite a thing, and very few people do it. I don't know if anyone does, but, you know, you think it's cheating, but I got news for you. It's a way to really learn something about that artist, how they construct the piece, and then make it your own. And sort of, you know, it's something worth trying. And I've enjoyed it myself. If any,
Barry,
yes.
Barry, think about all the people that go to museums all over the world and set up their canvases in front of masterpieces and copy the masterpieces as best they can. I mean, you know, it's like you say, it's.
I sort of take a Baldessari trick, and I've got the whole poster. So it's actually all done. And then I just have to color over. It's like color by numbers. There are no numbers. It's like totally finished. But when you then try and do that, something else happens. You know, something else happens as you try and do that. And that's sort of like the story of art or the story of a painting. And it will open up different paths for every artist and which ones they go down. And it's quite interesting. I'll have a few more questions, and then we'll move on to Monroe, who will finish up this presentation. If anybody would like to comment. Larry has said, I like your Madonna a lot. Thanks for sharing. Monroe has said, amazing and interesting work. Diane put her website information in, and as well said, it's so interesting, Anne. And I think definitely, I will correct you on one thing. You mentioned scene painting is more of a craft. Scene painting, cartooning, graffiti, it's all art. The word craft, I like to do it with a big K, like Kraftwerk, the band. You know, this is just one game we all are in, and we have been taught. You know, there was that show High Art, Low Art at the Museum of Modern Art. I want to say the late 60s maybe, and that sort of tried to bridge the gap. Certainly the pop artists bridged the gap in many ways between what's considered high and low, what's advertising art versus real art. And Baldessari opened up a lot of, or closed a lot of questions. So just to make that point, beware of what we've learned is fine art. Fine art made with little bits of sand. So I think it's all fine art, really. And, you know.
And that's very debatable. I'm sorry, very debatable. But you have a good point.
Well, good. That's part of it. Part of the art questions, they're not dogmatic. They are engaging dialogue, and that's why the abstract expressionists got drunk and fought.
Could I say something about Diane's brush strokes, which I found, you know, striking, and reminded me of El Greco, for instance. There's a lot of dynamic sky work, light and darks. Somebody else said, you know, that other artist. Who did you mention, Barry?
Bacon, Francis Bacon.
Bacon, yeah. Kind of like a brushy, that's what I find very unique about your work on the surface. It's the brushwork.
Thank you. Thank you. I love El Greco. He's a big influence of mine also.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you. And Effie, great point there. We're going to move on. Again, we're Artists Talk on Art. We're here every Monday. We're a 501c3. If you're not on our mailing list, you can always reach out to me through the website. You can put it in the chat here if you'd like to be on our regular mailings that we do once a week. And as well, again, I want to thank and now introduce Monroe Hodder, who organized this talk, Changing Color, for ATOA. And Monroe, go ahead. And I did want to ask Anne, you mentioned you live across the street. What street, what town are you in, Anne?
We're in Nyack, New York.
So I was going to mention Hopper. Hopper grew up in Nyack. You have the Hopper Museum there, probably the only museum dedicated to an artist that has no original oils by the artist.
Yeah.
Quite a unique claim to fame. But if you do see the house in the backyard, it's worth a trip. You can get a little feel of the buildings that he painted and what came out. There's no question about that.
Hey, Barry, just
Yes,
wanted to add one other piece to that. There is another museum that has an unbelievable place, but no original pieces of art. It's in France. It's the Toulouse-Lautrec Museum. They only have copies. Every Lautrec is somewhere else.
Interesting. Thanks, Larry.
Okay, just sharing.
No, all good, all good. And I think we'll move on now. We'll move on to Monroe. Monroe, go ahead, feel free to share screen and introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit, or anything you like, obviously.
Well, first I want to say Diane also lives in Nyack. So you actually have not only colorists, but 3 women painters from the same town.
Very nice.
So here I'm going to, let's see.
Oh, sure. Yes, very nice.
Interesting work.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I hope this is good. Let me see. Yeah, it's going to work. So last year, and we all know it was about a year ago when the pandemic hit us really hard. I was working in a studio in New York, in the Bronx, and actually, I wasn't all that happy with what I was doing and where I was going with my art, but I felt like I better get out of there. So I came back to Nyack and sort of refurbished the basement of my house, which sounds like a horror story, but it did actually turn out well for me. In my basement, there was a giant box of oil paints, which I hadn't worked in for over 5 years, and a lot of old paintings, just like Anne had. So here we are, neighbors, almost living the same life as painters. And this was the very first painting I did that is not as big as Anne's, but big. It's 64 inches by 56 inches. And it just kind of ran into the rafters at the top of my basement. Now, in the back, there is an acrylic painting that's very washy. You can see the orange up here. And this is all acrylic as it moves down to the green. And there's a big splash of pink right there in the middle. And that, like, the horses lowers my temperatures. And then moving on up to up here. So I took this painting and just began driving big slabs of oil paint across the front. And I was so excited. I just felt this huge explosion of energy. And I wondered why I had ever stopped painting in oil, because as a colorist, this just felt like and I say I'm a colorist, but that doesn't mean I think I'm really great with color. It means that my paintings start with color. I don't draw something and then fill in the lines. I actually just pile on the color, and that color says, oh, add something else. And so I respond to that and then just keep responding. So it's the whole painting is kind of a call and response as I move through it, not really having any idea, no plan, don't know where I'm going to end up. This just all kind of flows for me. And once I finished this, I thought, well, fine and good. Let's just move on to another one. So I got out another old. Now here you see the acrylic is pale green over here and around there. And it's got some bright pinks again in the middle. And I began painting with these big oil slabs across the top. And here I started to go, the paint, this looked first just like that. And then I thought, you can just add color and add color and add color. I mean, my enthusiasm for color never stops. And it's the same as I move down through these layers. Each one was like a little painting to me. And then just to anchor the painting, I did this one that's pale and medium blues. And you see right below it, well, not exactly right below, but there's another one. And those became like the linchpins of the painting for me. As I was just wandering through, enjoying all my experiments with color. And this one is called March of the Zapotec because that was actually the music I played over and over as I painted it. I can't do anything without music. And here is another big canvas, again, 64 by 56. And here you see the background more clearly. There's a huge amount of fuchsia paint just dripped across this painting with a lot of marks and stuff on top of it, and a big green area over here. And see, it's almost watercolory in places, and splashes and blues. And to tell you the truth, I was brought to tears by this painting because the painting, the underpainting of acrylic was so bright that everything seemed to, like this little piece, just fade into that pink. And finally, I just worked and worked, and the colors became lighter. And I got these sort of dirty pastels on top. And that caused the painting, the oil paint, to kind of jump forward a bit and actually make a painting that seemed to link together. Now, I haven't showed you any of the underpaintings yet, but here is one that is just a painting I did in my acrylic days. There was one painting way back there, then a blue slab, and then a painting poured all over the top of it.
Monroe, can you go to the previous painting just for 1 second, the one before?
Yeah.
Hans Hofmann was a very influential artist who sort of, I'm pretty sure he taught many of the abstract expressionists. He was sort of an elder figure, as Gorky was, as some other artists were to the Impressionists. I can't help but think of Hofmann in the best of ways when I see this. Am I right, or is it just coincidental?
Well, the real influence on me is Cezanne. I really go back that far. And in my very first painting, there were little, just like this, little rectangles of color. That's how I made the painting. And either I was influenced by Cezanne, or that's just the way I paint, you know, like someone's handwriting. But I've always liked Hans Hofmann. And I lived for a while in Indonesia and just started painting there. I'd go to Singapore and buy paints. And I just painted kind of a fantasy world. Then when I came back to New York, Hans Hofmann was the first person I saw that made me really stop and think, oh, there's a world out here I don't know much about. So thank you for that. I love Hans Hofmann. And now here's the painting I put on top of that. And you still see that white waterfall under there and a lot going on. And here are my Cezanne-like strokes that are placed over top of it. And I began to like these strokes more and more and to almost think of them as like little paintings. And I was just really hooked on oil paint by this time and having a great time, as I shared with my neighbor. So this is a kind of funny little painting that was really, when I lived in Colorado, I did this about the snow and ice. But it was just a bit dreary, maybe, the way things look kind of now. And so I grabbed this one out of my next, and soon it was something else. Now you can still see the gray lines and everything underneath it. Here's a little bit of that snow peeking out. But I was very interested in these darker sort of jewel-like colors and how to make them all work and work with the background. And this painting was just a huge surprise for me. When I finished, I was like, oh my gosh. So
Barbara Crow commented, "Oh, I like that one, the snow and the ice." I think, it's hard to define what abstract is, but you're really able to work abstractly, and that's not an easy thing to do. Even the first presenter had mentioned how the leaf shape, and she was working minimally. Diane was, but still, her work came from a leaf shape. I sense you, Monroe, you're going straight at a rectangle, so to speak, and you're working with abstract color, maybe like you say, referencing ice or weather, but in general, it's sort of interesting to push the envelope and put out a true abstract work.
Well, that's right. My work is completely abstract. I don't really have an image. I really just have color to begin with. And it does, I'll show you later how it does reflect who I am and where I am, but it's not a picture of anything. It's not a narrative. It's fully a metaphor.
Monroe, are you familiar with Joan Snyder's work?
Let's see. I do know her work and I do like it. Yeah.
Yeah, I see a little bit of an influence there.
Oh, I don't think there's an influence, but I find her interesting.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I just haven't seen enough of it. Okay, so this is another old painting that was about a storm, maybe. As you see, some of these are more figurative. And I wanted to paint on top of it. So here goes the top layer. And when I did, I found that this very dark gray color underneath was hard to work with because, like right over here, the colors just sank into the gray and I couldn't get the kind of buoyancy I wanted. So I took about half the colors off and I painted this kind of creamy yellow underneath, and then I put the color back on. And that let me pull the color forward. And I was so thrilled with this phthalo blue and quinacridone magenta that I just did it all over again and added more yellows and some more on blues and sometimes on top of pink. And so this is really like a double layered colors with pastels underneath. Now this one was actually upstairs hanging in my house. And I like the color, the yellow streams of color going across it, but I did find it a little dull and boring. And I was very much into vibrant colors in this last year. So I just went right with those vibrant colors. And here, you do see a little bit of these yellow streaks underneath from the earlier painting, but I continued that yellow streaking. So there's a sense of yellow lines going across the painting as the colors, the slabs of color move up and down. Now this painting, here I might turn it on its side.
Monroe, you're getting an interesting depth when you're working within your rectangles. In one way they read flat and you're sort of stacking them like brick. On the other hand, the colors are receding differently. So as a friend of mine mentioned in the comment, you're getting a great push and pull out of this. So it's this odd combination of it sitting flat and then moving back. And it's quite a complicated game. In this piece, your yellow is sort of anchoring things in.
Yes.
Anchoring things in. It's a great play. It's a great push and pull play. And this is only the second time I'm mentioning you, Matthew, as Matthew Burkar, a friend of mine, just pointed out.
Thank you, Matthew. So
I'm going to disagree that
Barry is saying, see, these dark colors, a paint company actually gave me this color, and it's called Swamp Green. And I found it was just a thrill to put it with the brighter colors. And they do move back very much further, say, than this pink right here. And the yellow, of course, is kind of flaming out on top.
I was going to say that I'm going to disagree that these are abstracts because they're only abstracts if you count clouds as abstracts. I mean the bunnies and the clouds and the teddy bears and the
Yes.
those things, because I'm seeing all kinds of images in here. Down the bottom, yeah, just a little right, is a hot dog.
Oh, with the little hot dog right
Yes,
here.
and then you go up at the bottom and toward the right. Well, anyway, yes, exactly. A little bit higher, actually. Oh, yeah, there's another one.
We call that art interpretation on an empty stomach.
There we go.
The beauty
Top
the beauty
center,
of-
there's
the beauty of abstract work is you can then read if you want figurative into it. Kandinsky did not like you to look at his painting and see the boatmen. He wanted you to see the colors, get the emotion and the spirit of the art out. On the other hand, it's up to the viewer what you take, but no question, no matter how abstract you try and go, the viewer will bring his eyes to the game, and he will at times pull out imagery that is specific. And yes, we might all see some boats, some hot dogs, some with ketchup, some with mustard, but yes, no doubt about it.
Well, I think there's sensuality to the way I use paint. It's a little bit like the sensual quality of food, actually. So that doesn't surprise me. And oil just can't be sensual enough for me. And then I make mistakes, like I scrape my hand over something, and I love that scrape. But anyway, this is done from this year. This was done in January. I'm getting a lot looser with the shapes and whatever. So moving along. Oh yes, this was sent back to me from a gallery, and I thought, oh, how exciting. I can really use these shapes. So I turned it on its side, and I liked these red stripes. And just as I got this painting back, January 6th happened with the terrorist attack on the Capitol. And I was feeling just very shaken up and not quite sure how to proceed. And all I could think of in my mind was anarchy. So this is how I dealt with this crazy painting and with our crazy times. You can still see this little point of the triangle, and there's the triangle there and the blue triangle, but it all just sort of jumbled together, and my more solid rectangles melted into the frenzy I felt going on around me. In fact, the name of this painting is Theater of Frantic Anarchy. And a friend of mine, Leah Poller, who I think is here tonight, was kind enough to put it in a magazine about January 6th. So
There
this is
there definitely is an odd feeling of de Kooning in that last piece, of sort of the energy in a de Kooning. You often let your rectangles stay separate. You don't work with one rectangle bleeding into another, and you don't use too many diagonals nor vertical lines that pierce it. Here, you've used that, and it's sort of activated the space in a different way. I do want to say Diane Churchill said, bravo, Monroe. And Basha Ruth Nelson, who had to leave, said she loves your work, the rich colors and the graphic element. And Olga Alexander makes a sharp comment, and she can't help thinking of Wayne Thiebaud's cakes all smashing up against each other to make an interesting grid. And yes, you create a sort of a plastic sensibility that Wayne does. Maybe him by going thick, but staying with luscious colors that are tangible, and yours are very tangible. You almost feel like you could peel some of those shapes off.
right, and he was an influence on me. I love the quality of his paint, the thickness and the texture. And you're right, Barry. I mean, here's a little rectangle all by itself, but in many cases, they're all kind of smeared together and crashing into each other. But it was that kind of day. So moving on into this year, this was a painting that I actually really like. Now, this is all acrylic, And I put these marks on with cardboard that I cut just to the size I wanted and pulled it back. So I got the marks of the corrugated cardboard coming into this, and I could get really thin paint on this. And I sort of hated to paint over this, but I did. And again, the energy of that bottom painting just moved through me. And here's me using the yellow underneath again. And there's much more than you think of the bottom painting in here. It kind of travels all the way through. And when I really felt lost, I thought, okay, I'm just gonna splatter some black and white in here. And I think it'll straighten things out. I don't know if it really did, but that's, this is called In Our Interesting Times. And it is, this 52 by 44. Now, that's all of the paintings I have. But I began to think that I would like to even more separate the backgrounds from the foreground of oil. So I got out my old watercolors. This I'd done in Rome. See, somewhere it says R-O-M-E. And now just remember this little web of lines there, and you'll still see that web of lines with the oil on top. And here I've really just continuing to enjoy what different things you can do with oil. And in real life, the way these are on paper, they're 22 by 22 inches. And the way the oil stands out on the paper is just a thrill for me. I did put down some layers of gel to isolate the oil. This is a half finished watercolor. And see, I even paint, you can see this is sort of cracking and curling over. I just didn't worry at all about making this oil paint really thick on top. And I had a lot of fun with this. I really liked this big shape in there. So I did another, I got another old oil color. This one I did in Puerto Rico. And it's really pretty watery, but I was right by the ocean. And I painted this on top. And I wanted it to go to red and yellow, but it just didn't want to. So I painted them all out. And this is where I landed. Now I have two more watercolors to show you. This one is has a lot of pencil marks on it also, and scribbling. And that was kind of fun with the oil on top. And the last one doesn't show any of the watercolor at all, but I just want to make that my ending piece. In fact, I just posted this on Instagram this morning. So it's got these wonderful magenta colors that you can mix with white. And I often contrast that with this cadmium red vermilion, which I hope isn't poisonous, as someone mentioned earlier. But it's just my go-to color. I just love it. So I hope somebody has some comments.
Monroe?
Yes.
Do you prefer the paintings that are more in a grid and they're from edge to edge, as opposed to some of the later ones that have the space more opened up, and there's a little bit more variation in those rectangles? Which ones do you prefer?
Well, I'm the kind of painter who doesn't know what she's going to do next. Like, so I'm moving out of my basement studio and back to my studio in the Bronx. And that itself will give me so much more space and light. And I like to do some really big paintings. They're like diptychs. And I think something entirely different will happen there. But I think the freer ones are the direction I'm moving in.
Those were the later ones.
Yes.
The ones you just, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love those. Yeah.
Do you prefer those two?
I'm sorry?
Do you prefer those two?
I do.
Oh, yeah.
I do. I like all of them. The other ones are making me crave cake right now, but I love both of them. But I find the ones that have more space opened up, I could breathe more. They just breathe more, and they flow, and I
Mhm.
could see them very big.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah,
Thank you, Olga.
you're welcome.
Monroe, I do want to ask you, having been in the South Bronx, where in the Bronx is your studio going to be, and where were you? Were you in Mott Haven?
Yeah, Mott Haven.
Where exactly?
So I'm 605 132nd Street. There's a big building that's all full of studios there that was a print factory. And just going across one little bridge and your studio price goes down $2 a square foot.
Yeah, I know the buildings you're referring to, across from the Bruckner Bar and Grill, correct?
It's near there, and it's also near Fresh Direct, the food company. No.
It's a great little area for people who don't know, Mott Haven area. It has been gentrified. They've put up many, many buildings, but there was quite an artist scene there back in 2000, even 1995, and moving forward, because you could get studio space at one point for $1 a square foot. So 1,000 square feet might be $1,000
Yeah.
back in the day. Today, it's probably more like 2,000, I would imagine.
Yeah, $2 a square foot. It's about as low. I'm a little lower than that, like bargained. It's not much.
I open it up to a few questions and I'll do a slight recap. Thanks everybody for staying around. We often do go long. We let the content carry us here. So we'll take a few more questions. I do want to say Mitch Pilnick, one of our board members, says bravo to Ann, Diane, and Monroe for a wonderful presentation of colors. All so unique. And I think that's the point here. 3 artists in Nyack working with color, but working with color differently. I think that's sort of a beautiful side, how we're similar, but we are unique. Halana said, I was watching from a distance and the colors move in and out. Fascinating, Monroe. Annette Hollander said that. Monroe, Audrey Anastasi said, Monroe, I love your exuberance. And I think, yes, everybody brings their energy, their spirit, and somehow it's in the work. I think that's why I earlier asked Diane and sort of her singing. You would imagine Diane as a soprano. She's not a baritone. And that sort of spirit is carried through in her painting. I think the colors you choose reflect who you are. You don't necessarily know that or why, but it's sort of like your impulse of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions or thoughts? Everybody's always welcome to share. Not all at once. No, that's okay. We'll wrap it up. Audrey has said, excellent mix. Audrey Anastasi, excellent mix. All terrific presentations. I couldn't agree more. I think first, claps for all the artists. Great job. And, as well, for everybody here who's participating, we sort of help artists by sharing, by looking at the work, by applauding, and by giving positive comments. I know all the artists are going to come away from tonight, as the artists do usually on Monday, with some extra energy that they didn't have, and it's going to come out in their studio. Maybe it'll be what carries them. There's nothing like selling a work of art. That always gives us a juice and inspires us, but so does accolades from friends and peers like this. We're Artists Talk on Art. We're the ATOA, atoanyc.org. We're a 501c3. If you'd like to contribute, you can see our website. I did in the chat, I put our information about our YouTube, but just go to our website. I've got the YouTube channel is listed all over there, and just a direct link will get you there. Spread the word, tell your friends to come to listen in, or if they'd like to share, or any of you would like to share another week, just reach out to me and we'll put you in the schedule. Thanks so much to everybody. This was another great talk. And earlier somebody said, I sort of pushed through even when I had COVID and I did this. Doing this makes me get better. Just like making art makes us better people, or because we get in touch with who we are at an essential level. And I was feeling quite sick once when I was doing this talk, but somehow just talking about art and seeing other artists, my illness went away for 2 hours and my energy came back. And I think we feed off each other in the most positive ways. I like to say we're a hive, we're a clan, and we've developed a community. So thank you all. Artist Talk on Art is about you guys coming together. So thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Barry. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Good night, all. Thanks for the presentation.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah,
Stay
thanks,
well.
Monroe.
Good night.
Stay well,
safe.
stay healthy.
Well, see you next week.
Good night. Thank you, Barry.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Keep resting. Take